The Athlon 64 was AMD's powerhouse offering to compete with Intel's Pentium 4 line in the mid-2000s. Originally released in a Socket 940 platform, the Athlon 64 FX processors typically outpaced Intel's Pentium 4, sometimes by quite a healthy margin. The Athlon 64 I have decided to use for this Ricer build is the Socket AM2 Athlon 64 X2 6400, say that 5 times fast. Running at a default clock speed of 3.2 GHz per core, makes it the fastest K8 processor AMD produced before moving on to the Phenom line. Although the AMD K8 did live on for a short period of time longer as a low power offering, energy efficient version as they called it, after the Phenom was released. But it never saw, again, the breakneck performance it enjoyed with the 6400 Plus. For this build, I chose the cheapest NVIDIA-based motherboard I could find at the time, which ended up being this Foxconn NVIDIA 590 SLI board. It was the cheapest because the seller said it was of unknown working condition. Thankfully, this board works like a top, though. And a lot of times you end up getting a pretty good deal by taking a chance on something if you don't know or if the seller doesn't know it actually works. This board is based on the NVIDIA reference board, but with a twist, which will be seen when I boot the system up later on in this video. The sound card I chose for this is the X-Fi Extreme Gamer Fatality with a fat 64 megabytes of onboard RAM, which most games ended up not taking advantage of, unfortunately. Still, though, it was cheap because I knew that it was what I was looking for, and the seller didn't know what it was actually, that he was selling. So I'm not totally set on the video card at this time, but for now, the system, I'm using a 7900 GTX in it. I may end up going with a real SLI setup at some point for this, and I do kind of intend to do that. But for now, this is what I have for the system and will be a good baseline card if nothing else. 4 gig of RAM for right now. If I feel a need to put more in the system, I will. I can push it to 8 pretty easily. If I find a good deal on DDR2 memory, I might do that. I don't know, but we'll see. I don't know. Well, now that the system is complete, let's go ahead and fire this beast up and show it in all of its modern LED big fan tempered glass case glory here. Turning the system on shows a curious BIOS image on the screen, kind of a alien looking thing there, head thing there. Yeah, as it turns out, this board came out of an Alienware system. So you could say I built myself an Alienware, just not in the same case. This motherboard would have been used in a system that was built about the same time as when Dell took over Alienware. And this was before, long before, Alienware started really becoming more like Dell's, frankly, just in a special case. The BIOS options on this motherboard are pretty good, as you would expect from an Alienware system. And of course, we do have overclocking and other fun things we can tweak here if we wanted to, which right now I don't, but maybe sometime down the road I will. Originally, I was going to play with this around with Longhorn on the system, but after trying it, for actual really trying to use Longhorn and failing, along with being riddled with bugs and driver issues, and I just decided to screw that whole thing for now and go to the operating system that was the hot shit back then, Vista 64 in this case, Ultimate Edition, of course. So now everything works as it should, and the system is usable. It's a nice little Vista gaming machine. Of course, this will run Windows 7 with no problems, but that's not the point. I wanted to build a good Vista-era machine for gaming and mess around with a little bit, and be a good comparison system, if nothing else, for down the road. Baseline configuration for benchmarks, upgrade it, play around with it, compare it to a Pentium 4, just kind of things like that for future benchmarks. This is about a decade-old hardware. It's getting to the point where it's old enough for me now. Prices are getting to the point where it's starting to become hard to find some of this hardware, but it's not entirely impossible to find it at a cheap price if you're willing to do like I did and kind of take a risk on something that might not work. In my case, this time it turned out pretty good. It usually does. Not always, though. I have had some times where it didn't work out. I wanted to get a good collection of some things here to mess with before it becomes, say, like the prices of the 486 stuff nowadays, which is really, really ridiculous, I've noticed lately. It's kind of sad what's happened to that stuff. Anyway, it's time for benchmarks, and I don't have anything to compare this system with right now. So this is going to be the baseline system for future videos. Throw a different video card in here compared to the Pentium 4. As I said before, things like that is what I'm intending to mainly do with this system, and also some gaming occasionally. Well, this was an interesting project. Build a old school PC, not really quite vintage, but old school PC in a modern case, and I think it turned out pretty well. The one thing I do have to say about this processor, it does produce a lot of heat. It's usually something reserved for the Pentium 4 line, being usually called a room heater. In the case of this Athlon 64X2 6400 chip, this really is a room heater, and the rear exhaust fan blows some seriously warm heat, as well as the top of the case getting rather toasty where the heatsink is. Nice solid copper heatsink, and even it is really working to keep up with the heat that this processor puts out. So for right now, overclocking is kind of out of the question. I'm sure it could do it, but I'd prefer it to run a little bit cooler than it is to do overclocking. It may see a water cool at some point in the future, but for now, this is the WayBackTech signing off with my Ricer build. Vista Ricer, yeah, baby. We'll see you again right here on the WayBackTech channel. Peace out, everybody.